Hey.
Good afternoon. It is 3:01 p.m. on June 9th. I will call to order the executive board meeting for YCOM, previously scheduled for this date. And let's begin. I'm going to ask Stephen Long to lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, other than any public comment with respect to the budget hearing, which we will open shortly, is there anybody that has public comment, just general public comment for the YCOM Executive Board that is online? If you do, please raise your virtual hand so that we can give you that opportunity to make public comment. I do not see anybody indicating that they have their hand raised for public comment on our regular executive board agenda. We have no old business, so at this time at 3:03, I will open the hearing for our budget for fiscal 26-27. And we also have an opportunity now for anybody who would like to give any public comment on the proposed resolution for the YCOM budget for the next fiscal year. If there's anybody online that would like to make any public comment with respect to the budget or the budget resolution, now would be the time. Raise your virtual hand. We have one. If you'll promote him. Chief Godfrey, if you can hear us.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, committee, commission. I just wanted to reiterate the email that I sent to our rep Vanderwally of the concern of the 18%. I do support YCOM and I support the increase, and I understand. I think 18%, I'm a little concerned of that amount for this fiscal year. As I stated before, and in our poll, when we polled support in our budget committee, there was no support for anything over 15% in our poll, and we ended at 18%. So I appreciate everybody's work. I appreciate the director and her team's work, and I do support YCOM, but I do hope that the board considers that significant increase. And thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief. Any other public comment from anybody online? Seeing none. We do have one individual in the audience. Just want to make sure that you have no public comment before I move on. Thank you. So I will close the hearing for public comment on the budget for fiscal year 26-27. And that brings us back to our deliberations. So there is in your packet the draft resolution taking the information from the budget committee. And now we get to decide.
I'll kick us off. So I appreciate the 18% and knowing that it is needed and can be put to good use. I think that at least at the county, and I'm sure most of the cities and smaller districts, we've all been asked to do more with less. And so I think that it was, I wasn't here and I didn't get to make these decisions, but I think that to turn off that 3% for that long was a bit of a mistake. And I do agree that we need to right size, but anything above the right sizing, I think is, nobody gets that right now. So I would be more supportive of I don't know where that was, if it was 14 or 15 during the budget presentation. I know that 14 stuck in my head that that's kind of the bare minimum. And that's where I would be comfortable with myself.
All right, thank you. Chief?
I would echo the public comment by the fire chief and the comment by the commissioner. 18% kind of came out of nowhere during that budget meeting. And while I appreciate and don't disagree that funding YCOM is important to all of our organizations, granting them over and above what the director herself even came and asked for in that seems a bit too far. So I, like the commissioner, would be more comfortable with something in the vicinity of 14%.
David?
Well, as one of the people that supported the 18%, I still kind of stick to that. But my mindset in this is I feel like this 911 excise tax is going to probably go away, and we're going to be stuck with a pickle of, 1 year we're going to be jumping 20% over whatever they asked for just because we're not going to be able to fund it any other way, or we're going to have to come up with another funding source of some sort. With that being said, the director offered up 16%, 18%, and 20%, I believe, were the two or the three choices. I know 16 and 18 were choices on what the director presented to us. So the 18% was there. It just, we never really discussed it at that point until we got to a vote. If we were going to drop this down, I guess I could be supportive of going down to 16, it's a lot of money for everybody. Don't get me wrong. I realize we're all kind of in the same boat, but I think this is a pretty important piece of what we do. And if we don't have YCOM, we don't have communication between the different agencies, we got a big problem. And I think it's coming. And at some point we're going to have to fix it, and you keep kicking the can down the road, and it's going to be a much bigger number next time than it is this time. That's kind of the way it always works out. So I guess that's where I'm at.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we did review the presentation that the director brought, and we did have some options within there that we were looking at different proposals, kind of what if exercise. And what stands out to me was, we're looking at trying to determine what is an acceptable ending fund balance when we get through the end of this coming fiscal year. And, what is an appropriate amount to tee up for what will be the subsequent year's budget. And I'm going to ask Patty, because I see the sheet laying right there in front of her with the blue columns, to remind us of those three numbers when you're looking at those percentages and what that leaves for an ending balance based off of the different percentages.
Mr. Chair, the blue columns represent 16%, 18, and 20, left to right. The 14% I did not highlight in blue, indicating to the committee I was not supportive of an ending balance that would be $52,207. This year, the budget is built off of a beginning balance of $884,793. And I explained during the budget meeting that 300,000 of that is not operationally available. So you started building the budget on $584,000. So the 16%, the ending balance is a total $92,130. The 18% is $132,052. And the 20% comes in at $171,975.
So even at a 20% increase, we would have a ending fund balance that is 20% of what the last year's ending fund balance that became our beginning fund balance for this year.
Yes, and there was a lot of discussion. I indicated to the budget committee at that time, irregardless of if one of these three balanced budgets was chosen, while I stand by the add backs that I brought to the committee, which were 27 months of 48 months that had been removed over three positions, or actually four positions the year prior, I recognize that at these numbers, 16, 18, or 20, it would not make sense to bring each of those back, even though they were in my ask, because I would be concerned about an ending balance that low. Because I too am concerned, even at the 20% one, to come back to you building a budget based on 171,000 in the following year, it seems unattainable. It's a non-starter.
Just for clarity, those beginning fund balances that you just listed off account for the reinstatement of those three positions. Correct?
So even,
So 92, 130, and 170 account for the reinstatement or include the reinstatement of those three positions?
so for instance, at the 18% that was approved by the budget committee, that includes 293,000 of add backs.
I mean, I know from talking with Commissioner King and with Administrator Huffer, looking at the impact that this makes to the county. I mean, if you look at the proposed dues schedule, that is the second page from the end of the packet, that is a substantial dollar amount that the county budget absorbs. And I think we talked at length during the budget committee about what comparable agencies are paying for the dispatch service in their jurisdiction, and the history that I think brings us to, again, this conversation today about the discounts that were provided back to all the members in 2020, 2021, 2022, that certainly if, as the commissioner referenced, if those savings had not been passed back to the individual members, you wouldn't see the need to make these kind of adjustments to counter both the decrease in dues that have been paid over the last 5 years, as well as the significant increases in costs that have occurred, particularly for personnel. So, when I look at my own budgeting process, and I try to look at where would I want to end a budget year and start the next budget year, certainly you want that to be in the best position you possibly can to minimize that yo-yo effect where, we've gone from an over $1 million ending balance or which becomes a beginning balance just a couple of years ago, now to potentially less than 100,000, depending on which option we choose. And, I get it. That's a tough conversation, but, I think it is incumbent that we all have to make that decision to provide the direction to the agency so that the director knows how to plan for the coming year and what that looks like for the potential of filling those positions that have been held vacant to capitalize on cost savings over the last fiscal year. And I appreciate the work and the discussion that took place with the budget committee, and my preference would be to stick with the recommendation from the budget committee, because we had obviously twice the number of people that were up here discussing, and that was not that everybody was in agreement, but that was the result of that budget process, and that's where I would be at.
Brandon Dross isn't on anywhere.
And I do not have any messages from him, so.
Could I comment while we're having our deliberations moment here about what, maybe I'm off base in my perception of this, but a potential cart horse moment where we're about to adopt a budget, but we've yet to move forward a 190 agreement setting what the fee structure for membership is going to be. So it seems like maybe we have an order of operations issue, and I'm sure members would be very unappreciative to moving forward a budget expecting one fee structure, only to have that fee structure change in the very short term based on changes to a 190 agreement that we haven't adopted.
No, I think it's a reasonable discussion point. We've had ongoing efforts for quite some time to get the 190 updated, and there's a lot wrapped up within that agreement to try to get everybody to a consensus. And would there be potential differences? There could possibly be differences on, what the total dollar amount that the individual members would pay, but it's not going to change what it costs to operate the organization. And it's not going to change the need that we have to fund YCOM. It's just going to change potentially what dollar amount is attached to what entity on the dues schedule. And until, that work is able to be thoroughly completed, we won't know what those potential changes might look like. But the end result is they still have an organization to run, and it's going to cost X dollars to run the organization for a year. And, when you start talking about the split between police and fire, what the service is, the core service that's being paid for, how the dues are calculated as far as what is the basis. I mean, we're now on however many years of just taking the historical breakdown and adding the increases uniformly across all members to get to what it costs to fund the budget for the year. And so going back to the way old, three-way consideration of assessed property value and number of calls and population, to looking at some of the concepts of the new ideas, total calls, is the police and fire split appropriate? I mean, I think it's a point well taken, but I also think that we would have had to have started that process last year during budget in order to potentially have something this year that would be changing how we're coming up with that. So. And I do not see our fifth board member. I know he's out of the area and was trying to join us virtually. So, and it does come back to the same question, the same conversation we were having a year ago, which is we're always last. YCOM's trying to prepare this budget and doing things after pretty much everybody else has already been through their budget process. And, there's even concepts for how to remodel that process and have that occur much earlier. But again, it comes back to the 190 and determining how we're going to structure the dues and when that's all going to take place to make that happen. And, in fairness, what was it in March that you were finally getting some numbers on some of the costs. So it's just having to guess as best we can prior to that. Well, I don't know where that leaves us. We've
I think it leaves.
kind of ran it down. We know.
Yeah, I think it leaves us with needing somewhat of a compromise, and maybe a willingness to meet in the middle. I mean, I agree, Dave, that, you know, it is important that we need to invest in these, and kicking the can down the road, I'm also not a fan of. So I would be willing to come up on mine, just because I do know that this is an essential service. You know, you guys don't get to do your jobs without this first. So it's a crucial piece of the whole puzzle. So, but also knowing that everybody is strapped. I mean, I don't know what your guys' city's budget is, but, you know, us two being the largest payers of this, this affects us the most. So, you know, 18%, every percent puts a little bit of a hurting on the county and the city. And then you go into MacFire, and, you know, it's putting it almost up to, you know, $35,000, and it's a chunk. So I think that we all have to save money where we can. I think that's what we're here for, is to figure out how we do that. Does anybody have a recommendation? Chief, do you have somewhere where the city would be comfortable in that?
To get to the 18% that the budget committee moved forward has a significant impact on my organization. It's going to cause me to hold positions unfilled to offset the additional cost of the service that I didn't budget for. While I'm hesitant to throw out a specific number, I really have a difficult time supporting over and above what the director herself came and asked us for.
And that was 15, 16, Patty? 16.
And 16. For everybody online. That was a 16% budget, and at 16, I denoted the 92,130 ending balance would not be my goal. Then I would work with the operations manager and the board to determine if any of these add backs could occur. If none of them occurred, I was putting the committee on notice that that'd be a 385,368 ending balance. So if that's the case, I would be starting $200,000 less again next year. And you can look at what, along the lines of the budget presentation, what each budget gave, and at each 2%, it's about $40,000 is all. So you can multiply that and see how we get to 20%, and that would be next year trying to just gain back the 200,000 without any increases in personnel, without any increases in materials and services, without any escalators for any vendors, and no add backs again. So we lost 4 positions a budget cycle ago, and this was trying to gain some, but at the 16%, I wouldn't be recommending that we hire them because I can't imagine coming to you next year with even the $200,000 less to start. So but yes, I did come with the 16%. And the 16% is the least balanced budget that scrapping all of the add backs would have us starting 200,000 less next year. Does that make sense?
Well, and, just running some rough numbers here, the difference between 16 and 18 for the county, which obviously is where my interest and the commissioner is $13,324 for the year. So, while 18% is a substantial percentage increase, we're going to save 13,000 by looking at something 2% less. And I don't personally feel that positions the agency to be where they need to be to both have the stability to start hiring and filling, because even the add backs is only 27 of 48 months. So it's, a little bit more than half of a true add back of the previous positions. And, I appreciate the concerns that come with these kind of increases, but I will tell you that people can only operate at 100% for so long. And if we're not creating some flexibility by hiring some of those positions back to allow people to take a vacation, to take a little bit of time off and decompress, we're compounding the problem. And that 2% that we might hold back and save this year, that 2% is going to cost a lot more next year, just with inflation and the trend that we have seen the last several years. From my perspective, me speaking personally, it's not worth it to me to save $13,000 to try to adopt something less than what the budget committee recommended. To put it in perspective, I spent 4 times that on one animal neglect case this year for dog kenneling. I mean, that's the way that I look at it is, a little over $1,000 a month. I mean, that's, I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can do within reason to position the organization to be as successful as possible.
So you're hoping to get 2 positions back this year? Is that the way that I understand it, or 1?
The budget that I presented included the salaries and roll-ups for 1 dispatcher, full family insurance at 9 months, 1 dispatcher, single insurance at 6 months, and 1 supervisor at full family insurance roll-ups with cert pay at 12 months.
So hiring a supervisor at the beginning of the year, hiring a dispatcher 3 months into the year, and hiring another dispatcher 6 months into the year.
And that plays with your training schedule. I mean, I know that you don't like to have too many all at once. More than 2.
Any further discussion?
Nothing I haven't already said.
I would move approval of the resolution number 26-002 that is included in your packet, that would adopt the budget for fiscal year 26-27 in the sum of $4,669,478 and make appropriations for the amounts for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2026 at $537,426 for the agency, $40,000 in operating contingencies, with a total at $4,577,426.
Second the motion?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. I'll call roll vote. Chief?
No.
Yes. Or myself, Commissioner King?
Yes.
Member Vanderwally?
Yes.
So with 3 yeses and 1 nay, the motion carries on the resolution. And we have 1 member absent. With that, we then have a proposed user dues schedule. Before moving on to that, I need to close the hearing for the budget deliberation. And then move. So that is closed at 3:32 p.m. We'll now move back and take up discussion on the YCOM user dues schedule. Obviously, the resolution was based off of the proposed dues schedule, but we would need a motion and approval by the rest of the board to set the dues for the coming fiscal year as either proposed or amended.
Do we have a opportunity for discussion?
Yeah.
Just back to the point I made earlier about the potential cart horse issue. If we adopt the current user dues schedule without an approved adopted 190 agreement, are we setting a schedule that we can't alter via adoption or changes to the proposed 190 agreement?
I don't believe so. I believe that we are setting a dues schedule today that is concurrent with the budget that has been adopted, and then any future discussions about amendments to the 190 and potential amendments to the dues schedule, they would just have to factor in what the operational need is in the budget that's been set.
Out of curiosity, just from a moving forward standpoint, would it, and the frustration of the smaller cities and not being able to set the budget, early on, would it be helpful to maybe with the I-90 or 190 moving forward as well and the changes, explore the a biennium for YCOM so that there is kind of this 2-year plan out? And I mean, I don't think any of us does it. I think Newburgh is the only one that.
No, Newburgh
County.
runs off a biennial budget. I would probably have to ask the director if she's familiar with any other entities in the
It
dispatch
seems like a
world.
nightmare to switch over, just to be clear.
Yeah, I mean I know that I have 2-year contracts with some of the cities, and even that is challenging because you don't know from 1 year to the next what your cost increases are going to be that you get passed along from your providers.
Yeah.
And so, obviously you would probably have to have some much larger contingencies built in to be able to absorb some of those increases if you wind up with health insurance premiums are going up 20%. So
How far away are we from the 190 being properly discussed here?
it's hard to say. Have some feedback from some of the budget committee members, and then there is some feedback. I mean, we have the product from the work group that was previously working on it. But I think that in reality, if we're going to see us get through that in a shorter period of time, we're just going to have to schedule work sessions here with the board, and we're just going to have to plow through each section and see if we can come to a consensus.
So in theory, we're months away from the 190 and to that, this proposed
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that.
fee schedule. I mean, we could be most of the way through the year before that's done. So
I did have a question for the director based on the commissioner's question regarding a biennial budget. If you were to move to a biennial budget, I have no idea what the duration or the synchronization of your labor contract is. If you were to move to a biennial budget, obviously we're not going to do that right now, but if you, for a year from now, how would that sync with your current labor contract?
It would run afoul of the labor contract once per contract. They're 3 years. So we are in year 2 of our labor contract. I would also want to add, I am a proponent for strategic forecasting finances for all of our members. And the idea that when the 190 is updated, whatever formula, whatever split, whatever formula, if there's a change there, if there's a calls for service, a population, a taxation component, the numbers are ran on odd and even years so that this is 2026. The numbers for 2026 are ran and take effect for percentages for dues in 28. That gives all of our members a full budget cycle to prepare for any change. I paid 3.1% this year, and I know it's going to go down or because of the formula, or I know next year before there's a change in the budget, I would pay 4.1%. And I think that forecasting would be very helpful. The final comment I would say is that Ken Huffer and I have spoken several times this year about we can't go ahead of the county, but trying to get YCOM started at the same time as the county so that we kind of run concurrently and seeing what that might look like. So traditionally we start after. It's things like CIS that cause the problem.
that gets you 2 months ahead of it.
And I appreciate your thought about the labor contract. It would be an unknown every other biennium.
Yeah, having worked at a organization with a biennial budget and a labor contract that didn't seem to settle on the biennium, it was difficult to estimate what your labor costs were going to be going into your new budget cycle. So
What kind of language do you need for the?
We would just need a motion to adopt either the proposed user dues schedule or amend it to something else, which
I would move to adopt YCOM's proposed user due schedule for fiscal year 26-27.
motion from Commissioner King. I will second. Roll call vote. Chief Wood?
yes.
Yes from me. Commissioner King?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous yes from all 4 present. And Member Dross is not present. That brings us to new business.
Kind of takes the air right out of it, doesn't it?
There's some good stuff. There's some good stuff in the new business.
Not even here.
At the back of your packet there is a proposed resolution recognizing Executive Board member Brandon Dross for his years of service as the small cities representative on the YCOM Executive Board. I will read the resolution for those that are online. In recognition and profound appreciation of service, small cities representative Brandon Dross, whereas Brandon Dross dutifully served as a member of the Yamhill Communications Agency Budget Committee in 2024, and whereas Brandon Dross has dutifully served as a member of the Yamhill Communications Agency Executive Board since July 2024, and whereas member Dross served as the small cities representative, utilizing his position on the YCOM Executive Board to give voice to the cities of Amity, Carlton, Dayton, Lafayette, Sheridan, Willamina, and Yamhill. And now therefore be it resolved that the Yamhill Communications Agency Executive Board at its regular meeting on the 9th day of June, the year of 2026, does hereby recognize and commend Brandon Dross for his many contributions to the YCOM Executive Board, and be it further resolved that this resolution is included in the minutes of the meeting and a copy presented to Mr. Dross as a token of the board's appreciation and sincere thanks.
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner King. Second from Chief Wood. Roll. Any further discussion?
Thanks, Brandon. I know you're going to listen to the recording at least.
I too would echo, really appreciate Brandon's contributions. And the one thing that I always appreciated is I knew exactly what Brandon thought. And he did a very good job of bringing the perspective of the other small cities. He was not here self-serving, but he was truly representative of the small cities. And we appreciate your contributions very much. We have a motion and a second. Chief Wood?
Yes.
Yes from me.
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Unanimous from the four present approving the resolution. I will present that to Mr. Dross as soon as he's back in the area. And then with his time on the board and that coming to an end, we have the small cities who have chosen Mayor Rachel King to serve as their representative. She is with us online. Emily's going to promote her now. We would welcome Mayor King to the executive board now as the small cities representative, and I'll give you an opportunity to say anything you might like to say here as we spring this on you.
Thank you. I'm just looking forward to representing the small cities, being on the board, working together. And I think there's a lot of great work that's been done and a lot of great work to do ahead. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mayor. We look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.
I will be there.
And that brings us to item 3C, the director's update. And
Do
I
we
will
need to
turn
vote
it.
her in?
No, because the cities select their representative.
Got it.
So we could, I guess, accept her as the small cities representative, but they get to choose that. So I will turn it over to Patty.
Thank you. I brought a handful of updates for you. If there is something that you are expecting to hear from, please do let me know if I don't present that now. So when we last met and also during the budget process, we spoke about Yamhill County's deflection program providing grant dollars for a CAD-to-CAD interface that YCOM was participating in. I'm happy to say that we are currently live with Gerlach Towing on the CAD-to-CAD connection. Our dispatchers recently started the ability, and we can call or request a tow for any of our members in the field without making a phone call. We add a comment to the CAD, and the CAD-to-CAD connections is set up so that Gerlach Towing in Portland receives that request from YCOM. Our dispatchers went through training and saw a screenshot. It shows a map overlay, the location of the call, number. Doesn't have to have a case number. It could be the call number. And the dispatcher provides just in plain language, it's a white Toyota and here's the plate. Unlike some of the CAD-to-CAD connections that we're going to talk about today and in the future, Gerlach doesn't receive all of the call information up to that point. They simply receive that line of data that tells them the location of the call and the information specific to the tow. So I had some questions last time about sharing that information, and they receive just to their business case. They can then at that point, once we initiate the session, reply back to us, and their comment appears in the call narrative, and we can message back and forth until such time that either party just stops on that same CAD incident. In addition to that, we are ready to go live tomorrow with ODOT and OSP. Different from Gerlach towing, when YCOM initiates a CAD-to-CAD with ODOT or OSP, they will receive all of the call information from the moment that the CAD started. So they'll get all of the background in addition to the narrative that is requesting a unit on a call. There's two-way messaging available also for these calls. And a difference or a one-sided is that YCOM can initiate a session, ODOT and OSP cannot, but once we have the session up, then they can communicate freely back and forth. So if they were to want to communicate with us silently, they could place a voice call to us and ask us to start something to add them to a call and the same thing. So the exciting thing about that is that troopers in the field that are monitoring our CAD through Inform Browser or through Field Ops or through even Pulse Point can see the messaging between us, and all of YCOM's police users who have mobile data terminals or are users that also monitor CAD by browser would be able to see the messaging back and forth between YCOM ODOT or YCOM and OSP in real time. So that's very exciting for us. Next up also is we are ready. All the connectivity is done for us to have CAD-to-CAD interfacing with Newburgh. I would say it could go live tomorrow as well. And Steve, as he's able to pull the screenshots of that, that is literally sending an entire call. So it's even a bigger expansion of the sharing. The intention between YCOM and Newburgh is at the onset is we will share as much as possible with each other for full visibility. The ultimate goal being that field units would be able to see everything as well and not just down to the narrative. So we want deputies to be able to see calls for service in Newburgh, whether or not we're connected and talking with them, and police officers in Newburgh to see deputies' calls, regardless of whether or not they're assigned to the call as well. So this is very exciting, that grant. You know, it paid for numerous things, and it will really enhance the interoperability and the efficiency of us working together. So we're very excited about that. Are there any questions there?
I would just add a comment that, you know, when we were having the discussions about ways that that grant could help with what we're truly trying to get to, it's a part of the deflection program, and that's addressing the individuals that we encounter, whether it is an actual criminal violation or whether it's one of the other interventions by a first responder. But certainly we have those overlapping incidents when you're talking about overdoses, and making sure that we're communicating information as quickly and accurately as possible for all those responders and stakeholders, trying to make sure that we're sharing all the information and getting the right people in contact with the right people to hopefully see those successful outcomes. So I think it's going to be a great expansion of our communication across the county.
I appreciate your comment, as well as that brings me to our community outreach team is also able to see CAD narratives. So as Newburgh enters, with our CAD to CAD connection, the COS team gets to see in real time too. And that's something that they haven't had. So it is very exciting what we've been able to do under that CAD to CAD partnership. Next up, some future enhancements. The consortium's trying to get PG, Northwest Natural. We would love to have other outlying centers. We'll be working on a CAD to CAD connection between YCOM and WACA. So we have some other ones that will be teed up there. We would love to get our counterparts in Salem as part of that. They have a different CAD system. And again, this technology provides disparate brands to be able to connect with each other. You don't have to be on the same platform. So pretty excited about that. And we will make sure to give you regular updates and maybe some screenshots and show you how that is going. One of the other things I want to talk about is most recently, YCOM had a 911 outage. And I say that with a smile because it really is a success story. There was a major equipment failure, hardware failure on the Ziply side. And when Ziply took over 911 service from Frontier, they acquired an aging legacy 911 system, from camera trunks to aging fiber to aging switches and suddenly found themselves in the 911 business. And they had a catastrophic failure between Forest Grove and Hillsborough that took many, many days to identify and isolate. And in the meantime, the impact to both YCOM and Newburgh was a specific number of our camera trunks, so 911 lines that were down. And when we mean down, we mean unable to receive 911 calls from the public. For YCOM, we have 7 911 lines. They're split between 2 different switches. They're geodiverse, and 3 of those lines were down. We do have a disaster recovery plan and our conditional routing. One of our conditional routing rules is that we have the ability to ask Lumen to reroute those 3 downed lines back to our administrative lines. And that's what we did. If we were down as in crippled with 3 lines down, you would have heard from me before then. I'm happy to report that from May 24th through June 3rd, we had 3 lines that were rerouted to our administrative lines, taking successfully all of the additional 911 traffic that we normally would have used off of our trunks 5, 6, and 7. The impacts to the center, though, they were not small, in that as the companies work on the lines, they have to bring them up live and do testing and diagnostics. And every time they brought them up live, there were endless repeated what are called ghost calls coming into both YCOM and Newburgh. So Newburgh had 4 lines that were down, and those 4 lines were then, their conditional routing said that the Washington County 911 Center would take on the overloaded traffic if there was overload to their center. So on May 28th, we had a particularly painful day in our center. The public didn't notice any difference, but our staff sure did. On May 28, 2026, YCOM processed 432 911 calls. In contrast, on May 28 in 2025, we processed 59 that day. Typically, this time of year, we're between 80 and 90 on a particular end of May day. So it was a lower day in 2025, but our staff handled 432 911 lines. They averaged just over 20 seconds at a time, which tells me they flooded us with ghost calls. And particularly painful was the 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. time with 123 calls. So our dispatchers were handling calls for the public, taking care of our emergency service personnel, all of our member agencies, and a constant ringing onslaught of 911 calls coming in.
That was 428, you said?
432 in that day. That day total, they handled 695 telephone calls that were inbound to the center In contrast, a year prior, 261.
And normally an average this time of year is, what'd you say, 70 to 80?
Sometimes 80 to 90. Like this weekend, I would expect them to be in the 90 range with the hot weather. Our counterparts in Newburgh, as painful as 123 calls sounds, they had 1 hour that they received over 400 911 calls. And in that day, where I'm reporting to 432 911 calls, they had over 1,200 911 calls. And 911 camera trunks don't know it's a ghost call, that there was contact made by a technician working on the line, or Patty calling because she needs an ambulance or an officer or a fire truck. So each of our centers had no alternative but to make a physical contact with that ringing line. Every one of those calls had to be answered, and they answered over 1,200 in that day. We answered over 400 in that day. So I want to shout out to all of our staff, as well as to our operations manager, Stephen Long, who spent 12 to 14 hours each of those 11 days monitoring 2 different conference bridges, one for technicians and one for agency problem solvers with Oregon Department of Emergency Management, Lisa Gorsuch from the PUC, Lumen, Ziply, Motorola Day Wireless, our technician there, Newburgh, YCOM, all problem solvers trying to identify what the issue was. In the end, Ziply ended up making an in-friend, so a home run, if you will, from each of our centers back to the location of the failed equipment and just brought in brand new everything, rather than at some point they quit searching for what the problem was and created new. Which brings me up to, I gave a portion of my presentation, both in the prior executive board meeting as well as the budget committee, about next generation 911. Next generation 911 in the future says, use a different IP address and reroute those calls. But we are still copper, and we're still fiber, and we're still legacy switches that are on a wall in a central office, excuse me, and dependent upon legacy equipment. So this is an example of a catastrophic failure that is absolutely a success story and needs the intervention of human beings in order to process. And both centers did absolutely amazing. Just as a visual, and I'm sorry for the screen, the green represents 911 calls in 2026 and in 2025, and you can just see the pie. 2025, it's very typical for 911s to just be a small portion of all the phone traffic that we have. The pink represents the administrative lines, and you can see it was nearly half in 2026. So I think about 40%.
Do you know how many of those were ghost calls?
No, I don't. I can tell you my estimation is going to be
Your guesstimation?
my guesstimation, yeah, would be about 350 of them on a given day. Overall, for the entire period of time, YCOM had 866 911 calls in 11 days, compared to the same period 1 year prior, 463. In 2025, the busiest hour for that time period was 30 911 calls, and the busiest hour in 2026 was 123 for us and over 400 for Newburgh.
Wow.
Are there any questions? So hands down, congratulations to Steve and his team, to Tim Vandewally, who sometimes there were long periods of time where Ziply technicians wanted to be at the demarcation point in our building. Well, they're not CJIS cleared to be. These are technicians that we've seen for the first time ever. and they're not cleared to be unescorted in the building. So Tim became a mobile office down at a small desk in the basement of the public safety building, escorting Zipley as they stood by in case they needed to run some type of diagnostic, and that was days on end. So they really did a great job, as well as our staff, giving a lot of grace and a lot of patience. And just in noise alone, it's just a constant noise, and you're trained to jump into action for that sound. And you have that sound going, oh, it's a prank, it's a prank, it's a ghost, right? It's not a prank call, but it's alerting you 24/7 for 11 days.
Probably heard it in their sleep.
I also wanted to talk about text to 911. I've been talking about it for a long time. Again, it is live in Yamhill County. We are putting the finishing touches on our marketing campaign. I want to thank the sheriff. I had been on the search for an ASL interpreter, so American Sign Language interpreter. He provided me with a list of court certified ASL interpreters, and I reached out to several of them, and we do have a volunteer who works locally for the courts, who is going to work with me to take a teleprompter and record a video for us as we put out our marketing campaign. Darcy Anclade has worked many hours for me developing video and audio, and in the end, we will be pushing out to all of our partners, as well as on our website, a video that announces text to 911 in Yamhill County availability with a voiceover, with closed captioning, and with a side-by-side of a non-hearing ASL interpreter who will be providing the message too. So I'm super excited about that. I recognize that it's taken us a lot longer to develop this. Our interpreter volunteer, she is out of town and back on the 13th, and we'll be full steam ahead there. So I have reached out to one of our citizens who's provided us some phenomenal feedback on our meeting notices, on our materials that we put out, as well as interacting with the public, and have let them know as well that I would be presenting that. And every time we talk about it, the slogan is call if you can, text if you can't. 90 seconds to 3 minutes for a voice call on the average across the nation, 13 minutes for a texting session on the average across the nation. And I saw a criteria the other day, the month of January in Oregon, there were over 20 minutes per session. So much, much quicker, much easier to relay in voice, and equally critical if you're unable to do so, that you have the ability to text and receive that. So we're going to do some education. We're going to launch with the video. We plan to come back a week or so later, give a few more tidbits, such as we can't do group messaging, we can't receive video, and we can't use emoticons. So it's plain language. We're the only language that we're able to process text to 911 currently is English. And for access to emergency services, we're reliant upon translation services to be able to process other languages currently. We are looking at other solutions that have the ability to utilize artificial intelligence to help us decipher data and text messaging in a multitude of other languages. So I expect within the next year to be coming to you, talking to you about solutions. Some are free, some come at a very high cost, but they do also significantly increase our ability to communicate directly with the caller in their native language. Any questions there? The only other thing that I brought is by now, all of our members should have received notification. All of our staff did, as well as the chair put out an email to this body letting you know that Sheriff Elliott, Steve, and I attended a meeting, was it last week? It's all running quick, last Monday in Newburgh, and we met with our counterparts at the Newburgh 911 Center for the specific reason to discuss, was it time again to explore a merger of our two centers? The consensus around the room is yes, it does make sense to explore. And we intend on having additional communication with that. I don't have a proposal for you today. What I have for you is my commitment to represent YCOM 911 and all citizens, and efficiency to the public and the services to all of our members throughout all of those discussions. So the wheels are turning with all the technology folks, with and what I believe that consolidation, I know of 3 formal consolidation or merger explorations within my career. There were a multitude of others that were casual conversation, or is the time right? Unlike any of those that have happened in my career, this one came with a consensus across the table to give the same message, an identical message to each of our staffs, and speak to them at the onset. You might hear we've had a multitude of conversations, but literally Wednesday morning at the exact same time, Newburgh notified their staff, as I notified my staff, as the sheriff notified you, as the members of the user group were notified, that we had had initial discussion and agreed that to explore the concept of a merger between the two centers. And we gave identical information to the employees of our organizations, who really are the heartbeat of them, with the intention that our conversations would not be in a reduction of money, but in a long-term solvency for both centers, and increasing services, maximizing the best of each center has to offer in technology and people and capability for. So it is a conversation. I want to be very open about participating. I look forward to where the path and the adventure together might take us. And I'm excited. In my mind, it's time again. The last formal was in 2008. So are there any questions there? And that's what I brought to brief you on today.
Thank you, Patty. Any other questions or comments for the rest of the board or for the director?
Maybe just since, we all got the email, but just since this is a public meeting now, just in case, the way that I understand it is that there is a merger, jobs are being, nobody's getting cut. It's kind of that's part of the conversation. Is that true? And
Yes. So part of the
somebody at Newburgh or somebody online to get an idea that, when mergers happen, that's generally where it goes, is somebody's gonna lose their job, and I would hate for that to get out. So I just want to nip that one before it starts.
I did bring was a joint message to the staff of both centers that was composed together. And the very last line, as well as I had an email to my staff. Newburgh, as timing would have it, Newburgh had a staff meeting scheduled for that morning. So they delivered a handout and then conversation. I delivered an email to our staff with a commitment to have follow-up conversations. And the email ends in, to be clear, the concept is to evaluate an expansion, not a reduction in staff at either center.
Perfect.
Any other questions about the exploration? I think it was a great meeting that we had and discussed specifically that the employees of both entities are our first priority. That's why we crafted the message that would be the same information going to everybody, and they're included from the onset, not that we're having discussions and meetings and then bringing them in late in the game. So, none of us can predict what the end result will be, but I think that we do have a responsibility to be completely transparent from the very beginning in hopes of the greatest likelihood of success. So our next meeting, Thursday, August 11th, 2026. And we will have to keep you all posted. This meeting room will be moving, at least the equipment for this room will be moving over into the new commissioners hearing room, meeting room. I don't know exactly what the title is, over at the Government Services Building at 400 North Baker. Based off the timeline that has been shared with me, I would anticipate that our August meeting would be held over there because the plan is to move all of the AV equipment from here over to that room. But we will keep everyone posted and make sure that we all show up at the correct place. So here you're seeing nothing further, and our agenda is complete. Were you going to say something? Okay. I will adjourn the meeting at 4:13 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.